Craving your next action-packed adventure? Audible delivers thrills of every kind on your command, like Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, where a lone astronaut must save humanity from extinction, narrated with stunning intensity by Ray Porter. From electrifying suspense and daring quest to spine-tingling horror and romance in far-off realms, unleash your adventurous side with gripping titles that'll keep you guessing. Discover exclusive Audible originals, hotly anticipated new releases, and must-listen bestsellers that hook you from the first minute. Because Audible knows there's no greater thrill than the one that speaks to you. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat. Start your free 30-day trial at audible.com/WonderyUS. That's audible.com/WonderyUS.
You're listening to 100 Words or Less with Ray Harkins. What is happening, everybody? Welcome to another podcast in which we are discussing the intimate details of not only a person's life, but their connection to punk, hardcore, indie rock, emo, metal, whatever genre you're talking about. That is what we discuss in great detail because it has affected us in a very deep and meaningful way, right? I mean, that's why you're here. That's why you're listening to over an hour-long podcast of this particular genre. It's awesome, and I love it. We're on episode, 662. I've been doing this for almost 13 years. It's ridiculous to say that, but I'm grateful to be here, and I'm grateful for you listening. Let's talk to Jensen Ward today. He is in a long-running, and I would define as legendary power violence band called Iron Lung. He has also played in Innumerable Forms. He's also played in Gehenna. He has played in a ton of bands. He has been incredibly prolific and active, not only with his band, but also they run a record label, they as in him and his band member from Iron Lung, called Iron Lung Records. They're not reinventing the wheel there, and that's totally fine. But I really, really respect what Jensen does and the dedication to not only his personal perspective on music, but how diverse the music is that he releases. Yes, it's all under the banner of what you would call maybe aggressive music, but he has been doing so much cool work. I had to have him on the show because Iron Lung also released a new record this year. It's called Adapting / Crawling, 18 songs. It's brutal. If you like bands like, Regional Justice Center or, No Comment, all of those awesome power violence bands where, truthfully, there's not a ton of power violence happening these days. And so when you hear it done well, it is exciting. And Iron Lung deliver it in spades. So you, the listener, you ask me occasionally, you're like, hey, you know what? How can I support the show? I find what you do valuable. Maybe you got a Patreon or whatever. No, don't worry about that. You can leave a rating and review on the Apple Podcast page, or you can simply leave a rating on the Spotify page. All of those things help the algorithm catch this and recommend the show to the people who need to hear it. Also, you can email the show 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. Love to receive feedback, guest ideas, all those sorts of correspondences I enjoy greatly. I just got back from a trip out to New York City and Philly, was doing some work stuff, but then also went to a few shows. It felt weird because I was out there for, like I said, work. I manage a band called Wakely, who is awesome, and I really, really enjoyed seeing them. They played a couple shows with a band called Arm's Length, and the shows were great. Got to go to the Bowery Ballroom in New York City, and then got to go to the Yuki Center in Philly and saw some friends, and it was a great time. But I felt weird because there were hardcore shows happening in New York that I wasn't attending. And when I say hardcore shows, these were, the Rich Hall benefit shows. And I'm going to the one that's happening out here in November, which I'm very excited about because it's unbroken and blacklisted. And if you haven't not got your tickets for that, you need to. Just go ahead and do that because it's going to be an amazing show. But yeah, you feel this pull where I'm just like, I feel like I should be at this show because like I'm a hardcore kid of a certain age, but I'm at another show. I don't know. It just felt kind of weird, but I was grateful to be out there and experiencing shows of all shapes and sizes and of different genres because, you can't make multiple shows in a night. I mean, I have before, but I wasn't about to do that at that particular juncture. So anyways, forever support Rich Hall, and he unfortunately passed away. But yeah, there's a lot of benefit shows that are happening, so you can Google it. You're smart enough, or you've heard other people speak about it. But anyways, let's talk about weekly recommendations. This is the segment in the show where I tell you music that I've been listening to and that you should also listen to as well. I have a cumulative playlist that I have as a link in the show notes where you can dip in there and listen to all the music that I feel is valuable checking out. And then maybe you'll find your new favorite band or whatever. This actually is a direct correlation to a future guest in a couple of weeks. I've been revisiting the Polar Bear Club record called Sometimes Things Just Disappear. And Polar Bear Club weirdly falls into this space that I think the band has been largely, forgotten. And not in like they're irrelevant, but just like their name isn't on the tip of people's tongues in the same way that bands of that era sometimes are, whether it's like a Title Fight or Citizen. Granted, Citizen is still an active band. But anyways, I had Jimmy on the show, and we're going to be publishing that episode in a few weeks, but I just forgot how much I enjoyed this band. And if you like anything from Gainesville, or you like anything, Strike Anywhere adjacent, you will absolutely love Polar Bear Club. But this record in particular has always stood out to me, and I love the band. So you should check that out, and all the other stuff that I included in that particular playlist. So dip into the show notes, listen to some music, and hopefully find something new. So yeah, let's go ahead and talk to Jensen Ward from Iron Lung and Iron Lung Records right now. Sometimes if you stick around, people eventually have to reckon with you. Where people either, whether it's your band, whether it's a record label or whatever, people have to at least recognize the fact like, oh, they've been putting in the work. Like whether or not you like it, that's a whole different story. And I know us being involved in this weirdo scene isn't like for validation in any capacity, but for you, the dedication to not only the band, but obviously the label has been incredibly consistent. Is the, I guess, validation for you, is it just the output of the work? You're just like, is it the process of it? What kind of keeps you, I guess, for lack of a better term, motivated?
Yeah, that's a good question. I spend a lot of time doing this stuff, day in and day out, every week, every year for what seems like the last 1,000 years. Oh geez. But what keeps me going, I guess, is I don't really do it for any sort of glory or recognition or anything like that. I do it because I think that the bands that we work with deserve to be heard by a wider audience than what they would sort of be able to reach on their own, either because they're new bands or because they're just not, they're fringe, fringe music in one way or another, whether it's like outsider or experimental stuff, or whether it's just, they're just fucking weird people who don't have any friends. Those are my kind of people. And so I try to sort of shine a spotlight on their music because I think that all of the music that we release is important and interesting and furthers, furthers our genre in one way, or whatever genre they're in, I guess. I don't even really think about it in terms of genres. I think it just furthers a sort of overall message that being on the outside doesn't necessarily require you to look in. It's okay because someone's looking for you, and I want to help people get there, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
I love the people that we work with, and I love the music that we release, and I really think that all of it should be heard.
Mm-hmm.
So that's realistically, that's what pushes me to keep doing stuff all the time. That, and it's a little bit self-serving too. So that way I have a vehicle to, for us to release our own records as well. So we don't have to deal with someone else's ego stepping all over our stuff, and we get to do things the way we want to do it because we do it all the time. And
Right.
that way gives us the experience to be able to do the best possible thing that we can do too. And so those are the main reasons.
Yeah, and I realize that's kind of a difficult question because, like, especially like you're talking about when you're in the thick of it, you are operating off of a lot of instinct that you have, developed over the past, 15, 20 years of releasing stuff. Where you're just like, yeah, this is what I do. This is a component of my human beingness to release music and to create music. But not. And not to say that you're just like blindly going forth without ever looking internally, but there does come that point where it's just like, what is the point of me expressing myself this way, whether it is musically or whether it is through the music you are releasing. And so it's cool to hear the driving force still hasn't obviously changed for you at all.
Not really. No. I mean, it was always, even when I was young, it was always a dream to be able to release some piece of music that I played on a format that I enjoy, right? So I remember when I was a kid, it was like, oh man, a band I'm in is going to have a song on a 7-inch comp. And that to me was a huge deal. It was like, this is the first time I'm ever going to be on like a real record, because anybody could make a tape. That's fine. CDs, I guess, were a thing at the time, but even back then it's like, who likes CDs? Nobody likes CDs. But to be able to put something on a piece of vinyl is amazing to me. And at the time it had such an air of mystique to it because it wasn't available everywhere, and it was only like the types of music that I really liked were available on this format, and it was like I wanted to be part of that so bad. And so I think after having released a song, I don't even remember what band it was that got. It doesn't matter. But anyway, released a record, and I was just like, oh, I got to have more of this. There has to be way more of this. And so I just continue to work, continue to make music, continue to sort of hone the stuff that we make, whether it's the songs that we write or, the bands that we release or whatever. I'm always sort of refining the process and trying to make it better and better and better. Ever since that first record that we did. And the first one that we did, I look back on now and it's like, man, there's 20 things I would have done differently. But that's natural. I didn't know what I was doing. I was really young and I still think it's cool, but we've made better things since. That's for sure.
Sure. I wanted to ask also about the iteration of the fact that it's like Iron Lung the band, Iron Lung the record label, like when you decided to, be able to, for lack of a better term, merge both of those things and be like, yes, this is the same nomenclature and vehicle. We're releasing our own records. We're releasing records that we believe in too. Clearly you could have delineated that where it's like, I mean, I guess, the common thing that people point to is like, oh yeah, tragedy records, or whatever.
Yeah.
Was there ever any idea for you to kind of like have a different name, have a different, separate the two, even though you would still ostensibly be releasing your own stuff through your own label?
I know the first couple releases that I sort of did as a record label entity, I had a different record label name. It was called Black Mott Records. And we released, I think, the first Vevictus LP was part of that. And it was like a co-release with Satan's Pimp, which was John from Iron Lung's record label before we were a band. He released all kinds of crazy stuff on that too. And I took a lot of guidance from him, whether he likes to admit it or not. Because I saw what he was doing and I was like, dude, this guy knows what's up. And he actually knows how to do this stuff. So I'm going to just do what he did and ask him. And he was super cool about it. He's like, oh yeah, these are the people that you talk to and these are the steps that you have to take. And so I learned a lot from him. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And like the first couple releases that we did were not failures, but not certainly didn't get rich. And it sort of petered out because, I had some life stuff happen and I didn't have any money and I was super poor. I didn't have a house. I can't be running a record label without a place to put the records.
A mailing address also helps. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was lucky enough to be able to keep a PO box,
That's good.
at all times. But even then, sometimes that expense of whatever $30 every 6 months was like, man, I really hope the PO box bill doesn't come this month because it's tight. So
Yep. Yeah.
but yeah, so we did that, and then I didn't try to release anything like on a label in a label way for a few years after that, and it wasn't until probably 6 or 7 years into Iron Lung the band that we decided to do our own record label, and we did it because we were touring a lot and seeing all these great bands, and they were just kind of local, bands that people mostly ignored, and really what it was our friend's band Lords of Light, who we did end up doing a split 7-inch with too, that we didn't release, but they had extra songs left over from a recording session that they did, and they're just like, oh well, no one cares, so we'll probably just throw them away. And I was like, that doesn't feel right. Like, you did this work and these songs are great. Like, they're great, they're so catchy and I love them, and like, I had a CD of the session or something and listened to it all the time, and I was like, these songs aren't going to come out, that's crazy. And so I was like, we'll just release them. We have like a couple $100 left over from tour, like we'll just put it into making a record for you. It'll be real simple, just a 7-inch. We'll stamp the sleeves, nothing crazy. We're just going to make it and see how it goes. And that was kind of the start of it. And since then it's, I think we're up to 300 and something releases now.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about that. It's like, I don't think about it sometimes. Most of the time, It's just like, oh, this is a thing I'm going to do today. I'm not like, I wake up in the morning and be like, yep, 300 releases.
Yeah, no big deal.
Holy shit, man! I can't believe I'm still doing this. I'm going to do it again today.
Yeah,
definitely never think about it like that.
Yeah, I think that most people that have the drive of what it is that, you and John have, not only in your own artistic endeavors, but helping other people to get it out there. Like, that is like you said, there's no ego attached to this. This is simply just like, oh yeah, like we're going to put out a record. And so it's like each one of them is its own process. Mm-hmm. And I know that sounds very basic to say, but it's like, yeah, it's only when people like myself ask you the questions where it's just like, oh yeah, I guess we've put out a lot of records, I guess. Like, I know we are, but like, I'm not focused on the body of work. I'm just focused on this record that's coming out in a couple of months or whatever.
Yeah. I have to do it that way. If I tried to think about the whole thing, my mind would melt. It's hard enough even just thinking about a couple releases at a time, trying to organize all the shit and make sure everything happens at the right times. And it doesn't happen at the right times a lot of time.
No.
Yeah. It never ends, man.
It's fun, it's fun. I'll pick apart some of that a little bit later, but just putting the focus on you as a person. I'm not going to go beat by beat in regards to your biography, but like Reno is, Reno is clearly an important part of your history and the band's history. And for anybody that's ever been through that town, Reno is so weird and not common for anybody to be from there, let alone, bands like Fall Silent, 7 Seconds, like the lineage of just being like, why do bands still keep coming from this area? I guess the basic question is, like, from your observation, why do you think there is that sort of fertile history in regards to Reno, just because it's not a, I guess, hotbed of culture?
No, it definitely isn't. Reno is a town that's primarily made of there's a large transient population there. And I don't mean transient in terms of homeless people. I just mean transient in the fact that people will come to the town because it's a casino town, and was a casino town much like Las Vegas was, in that a lot of these establishments were made by, mob members, and it's a city of vice, right? I mean, there's legal prostitution, and there's legal weed, and there's legal gambling, and legal everything. And so people would come from all over the country and go, wow, I can do all this crazy shit, and it's totally, legal. That's awesome. The liquor store is 24 hours and it never closes. I can get a breakfast at the casino for 99 cents. or they'll just give
Right.
it to me for free if I spend enough money in the slot machines. And so I think there was this weird allure where people would just come to the town, and then what would happen is they'd come and they would just gamble all their money away because, you know, the house always wins. I mean, have no illusions. If you go to Reno, you're not going to come out of there ahead. And if you do, you're lucky. Like you're like 0.1% of people come out of there in the black. So you go there, you lose everything, and you're stuck there. And so there's a lot of people, there's a lot of desperation in that city, but also everything in that city that generates any money for the city is all for people that are over 21 years old. So for kids, there's nothing to do. So growing up there, we had to make our own fun, you know, just like 7 Seconds says, you make your own fun, you make your own rules and all that. And we did that because it wasn't like, they were just like, you probably should do that because it's cool. It's like, there's really no alternative. Like you either make your own shows and you make your own music and you make your own skate spots and you make your own record store, or it's just not going to exist. So that's what we did. And I grew up with that mentality of just like having to do my own thing. And so I think that the culture of DIY just, it wasn't like a fun thing to be a tourist in. Like a lot of people are just like, I'm going to DIY this. It's so cool. And then, you know, that was our mode of operation was just that. We just had to do it. And we did. We still do. So
Yeah.
That's why, that's getting to your point though. That is why things exist there and it's not regular. Like, you know, Los Angeles, or even Southern California, anywhere, there's always going to be a venue and there's always going to be a band and there's always going to be some reason for those things to exist because that's just the way it is. In Reno, you know, if those things exist, it's because somebody made it exist and the city doesn't want it to exist. So they will work to make it disappear. But we keep fighting. So it's definitely gotten better now. Yeah. But yeah, growing up, there was just nothing. And so just like 7 Seconds or Fall Silent, like you mentioned, or any band from Reno was just born out of there being no alternatives, really. You know, I know that when 7 Seconds was around and they were friends with all these bands, you know, Minor Threat and Bad Brains and all Black Flag and all those kind of, you know, huge bands, internationally recognized and all that. They were going on tour and 7 Seconds were just like, dude, these bands are cool. We should have them come here. And so they would just write them letters. And that's how it still works, you know? Like you hear a band and you're just like, fuck yeah, this band's sick. I'm going to write them a letter or write them an email or whatever. However it is that you can communicate with them. You just write to them and be like, I like your music. You should come play where I live. And they'll be like, that's crazy. Okay.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah.
It's the means of communication changes over time, obviously, but it's the same principle of just being like, you're cool. This is great. You should come here and play with my band.
Yeah. Take a chance on it. You know, it might work out. You never know. We'll get 10 of my friends to come and you'll at least have enough gas money to get to Sacramento or whatever other stupid place you're going to go play.
So, yeah.
I'm not saying Sacramento's stupid. Don't take it that way.
No, exactly.
Whatever town is along the way, you know?
Of course. Whatever your West Coast run is based off of. And that's usually 7 shows in 2 weeks, you know? I have the distinct pleasure to talk to you about our awesome friends at rockabilia.com. If you have not visited the website and you've been listening to these ads for years, now is the day. Go ahead, pull out your phone, pull out your computer, go to rockabilia.com and browse away. Use this promo code 100 words or less. It gets you 10% off your first order and you will be able to just get lost in their website. I don't care if you're into hardcore, punk, metal, mainstream rock, hip hop. They got it all. And they got it all because it's officially licensed merch. They're not going to be shipping you some horrific bootlegs merch that will wash out and, you know, the design's just gone after one spin through the cycle. Awful stuff. You don't need that. You need rockabilia.com in your life. 500,000 items, ships from the Midwestern United States, incredible customer service if you've ever run into any problems. And I've ordered from them recently and I love what they do. So go to rockabilia.com and use the promo code 100 words or less. That's number 100 words or less, 10% off your order. Now go do it. Make it today that day.
Shopify's point of sale system helps you sell at every stage of your business. Need a fast and secure way to take payments in person? we've got you covered. How about card readers you can rely on anywhere you sell?
Thanks, have a good one.
Yep, that too. Want one place to manage all your online and in-person sales? That's kind of our thing. Wherever you sell, businesses that grow with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 a month trial at shopify.com/listen. Shopify.com/listen.
I know that you yourself, I mean, you've described in a few different interviews and places that you've, people have asked you questions that, you've had a tumultuous childhood in regards to, like, you were, growing up in group homes and foster homes and stuff like that. And like you said before, it was, the $30 for the PO box was rough to come by. I'm guessing that connected to that, was it the fact that you were excited to find community clearly outside of the home because there wasn't something stable there? And then you could be like, yes, going to shows is my community. Like, was that the kind of through line for you to feel, some sort of safe space, so to speak?
Yeah, partially. That's sort of a two-part thing for me, the community bit. Because you heard about my childhood. That's amazing. I guess all this advertising is really paying off.
It is.
No, I mean, that's certainly not anything that I've ever shouted from the mountaintops, like, woe is me, I was a foster kid and I lived in an orphanage and whatever. It's a fact of my life, certainly. But because I was in those situations, I gravitated towards skateboarding mainly when I was really young because it was super cool. And I used to go to the mall and you could just sit there. There was a skate shop in the mall called Park Lane Mall. And there was this skate shop called World of Toys, and they used to show skate videos in the window there. And so I would just sit in the mall and watch these skateboarding videos because it was free. And, it was a place for me to go where I wasn't going to get in trouble, or at least not for a little while. The security guards eventually would come and just be like, all right, move along.
We've seen you for hours.
You're like, I'm just hanging out. I'm not doing anything, I don't even have a skateboard because I can't afford it or whatever. And so, but in the end, I ended up being able to get a skateboard. And then so I would hang out with all the other kids that would just sit around and watch these skate videos, or they would be like, oh, we're going to go to K Ditch and we're just going to carve around in this crummy ditch behind Kmart. Or, it was close enough to my house that I could go. And so I would go, and I started to sort of meet people like that. And skateboarding has its own sort of built-in community that's so wonderfully supportive of, because it doesn't matter, what you are, who you are, what your skateboard is. It doesn't matter. As long as you have a love for skateboarding on its own, you can go and just be a part of this thing, and no one judges it. Everyone is just like, oh, you like skating too? Awesome. Come hang out with us. And so that was like the first part of it for me, and still is a major part of it for me. But in the 80s, skateboarding and punk were so synonymous that it was just sort of a natural next step. I was like skating around in the apartment building that, had a big parking lot and a little curb or whatever. I'd skate there. And then like a punk guy would come up to me and be like, oh, hey, you like skateboarding and what kind of music do you listen to? And I was like, I don't know. I like Public Enemy and I like, the Dead Milkmen, I guess. The guy's like, oh, cool. Listen to these tapes. And so it was like this really easy thing to just hang around with these people because these people were so accepting. And ultimately, a lot of the people that I met through skateboarding and punk, I mean, they're more like family to me than any blood relative will ever be. So it was a big deal. Yeah, it was a huge deal to me.
That's great. And especially to your point as well of the idea when you start to find these things on your own and you feel like you have some sort of authorship of your life, because most of the time when you're a kid or a teenager, people are telling you what to do. You go to school, all these other things. But for you to have that recognition of like, I can skate here, I can have some people here, I'm at least doing things that I want to do, as opposed to all the other chaos or tumult in my life where it's like, oh yeah, I don't have a choice to do anything but this thing. But everything else, I'm like, well, yeah, like I can listen to My War because that is apparently the record I need to listen to or whatever.
And boy, did I.
That
was actually, My War was one of the first punk things I ever heard. Because that dude, like I was telling you, that dude, I never got his name. was this guy, had big mohawk and a leather jacket, and walking up the street. And I always see him in my neighborhood. And he was like, "Hey, kid, listen to these tapes." And the 3 tapes that he gave me were Black Flag, My War, so was it Subhumans, Day the Country Died, and a Dead Kennedys one. I can't remember which one it was, but this was like 86 or so. So it was really early in my life. And it made such a huge impact. But I remember, listening to something as sort of deranged as My War is at that age, like made a ton of sense to me. So I was like, this is so angry, and it's so like outside of everything, because Black Flag at that time was such a like insular, like angry band. And they were like, we don't want to be friends with anyone. We're just going to do our own thing. And that's fucking it. And I really identified with that. Like that made a huge impact on me.
Yeah. And kind of springboarding off of that, the fact that I think a through line that just at least I've observed in the way that you have spoken about your musical taste, but also clearly the devoid of genre approach that Iron Lung Records has. You were getting into music of all shapes and sizes, from clearly the Public Enemies and all that sort of stuff. And then, you were traveling all over the musical map, which you can do as a kid because you don't have these like rigid swim lanes of like, I can't get into punk because I'm into hardcore or I'm into metal or whatever. Like, that obviously goes away with age. Your musical inquisitiveness, it seems to know like no real bounds, so to speak. Has that always been you, where it's just like, I'm looking for a little bit of everything?
Growing up, both of my parents were musicians that played in like symphony and marching bands and like all kinds of, they did musical theater, like orchestra pit stuff. So, I mean, I was around a lot of that kind of stuff growing up. And my biological mom worked in a music store. So, and we, she could never afford babysitters or anything. So she would be like, you got to come to work with me. And so I would hang out in a music store pretty frequently. And so when you're in a music store all the time, you're going to start messing around with shit. And so I would, snag a pair of drumsticks or something and bang on the drums. And then some guy would come by and be like, "Hey, what are you playing?" I'm like, "I don't fucking know. I'm just banging around on this thing because I like the way that, Cowboys and Indians sounds on the fucking TV. So I'm going to do the floor tom like that." Or like, violin has some strings on it. So I'll just grab this guitar pick and play it like a guitar because I'm an idiot and I don't know what I'm doing. And then someone will come up to me like, "That's not how you do that thing." I'll be like, "Okay, whatever, show me." And so, you just get all these random people that are like, anytime, and I don't know if this happens to you or not, but anytime that you see a very young person, under 10 for sure, interested in anything that you're even remotely interested in, you're automatically going to be like, "Yeah, I'm going to help you. Like, you're cool because you like this thing that I like." And that's weird. So I'll teach you how to do a thing, or like, I'll give you a piece of whatever it is that you need, or, something. So there was always these people around that would be like, "Hey, this is how you play, a piano or whatever." And I was like, I would look at it and be like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." Cause when you go up the keyboard, like all the notes are in a line. So that's easy. And they're like, "Yeah, figure it out." And then you just apply that same thing. And then sooner or later you just teach yourself how to play music. And that was pretty nice. I think because of that, I've always just sort of had a sense of, or no sense of boundary as far as what type of music it is. When I listen to music, I've always searched for a mood in the music, if that makes any sense. I don't want to say that I'm on a vibe quest or some bullshit like that. Like,
right.
There, when you listen to a lot of different types of music, you tend to hear certain chord progressions or certain modes that sort of you can identify with a little bit more. So like, I listen to a lot of Beethoven still, but when I was a kid, because, my mom played orchestra and stuff, I listened to a lot of classical music. And I noticed that all of the stuff that I liked as far as classical music goes were like this sort of darker, heavier composers. And so I was like, okay, Beethoven's pretty sick. Dude's like real depressed and had a shitty life. And I mean, I didn't even know anything about his life. I just heard the music and was like, yeah, Moonlight Sonata is awesome. And,
Sure.
it's so heavy and there's like these really intense parts. Or Shostakovich is like so oppressive sounding and so militaristic almost. And so, you hear these things and you're like, okay. And then you start to hear those same modes applied to other music. Like there's this guy, Gustav Holst, who made this amazing thing called the Planets. And everybody's heard Mars, the god of war. And it's like this really like marching sort of undertone to the whole thing. And everybody's heard it, whether they know it or not. So you hear that thing, and then you start, we used to listen to the oldies radio station a lot too. Because, broadcast radio is free. And I got a cassette player and I got lucky. So I'd record all these things that I liked. And then I heard this song by a band called The Sands, song called Listen to the Sky. And in that song, they played the Mars thing, like exactly, but they did it with like fuzz guitars and it sounded like bombs were falling. But it was this like 60s song. It was like a really pleasant melody in the first half of it. And then it sort of like crumbles into this insanity. And it's amazing. It's such an amazing song. And then I heard like Diamond Head or something. They do it too. I was like, this is the same fucking thing. Like it's just the same thing over and over again. And so like, regardless of what genre it is, you start to hear these things that you like. And that one's a very specific example because it's actually the same piece of music that all of these different people are covering. But, at the same time, you hear that same darkness that I was really enjoying from these classical guys. But you hear it in like punk music, or you hear it in metal, or you hear it in rock music, or wherever, jazz. How many like destroyed human beings are amazing jazz musicians?
So many.
These crazy drug addicts and like, they're all just out of their minds making this crazy shit. But then you start to hear that same. So it's like when you write music that sort of applies itself to emotion, like if it attaches itself to an emotion, like I hear that emotion maybe. And I don't know if other people hear music that way or not, but that's what I look for when I listen to something, is if I have some kind of attachment to it, or however that music is, unveiling itself to me, if I can connect to it on an emotional plane, then it's like, dude, this is great.
Yeah, you're like, game on, let's go.
Yeah, and then there's stuff that like just doesn't make any sense to me at all. Like pop country is a good example. No thanks.
Yeah,
I've heard plenty.
I've tried.
The production is really nice, but like, I don't give a fuck about any of that. I think the other one that really weirds people out is that like 90s R&B, not really my thing,
Yeah.
Bell Biv DeVoe and all that. It's not like fun for me, because I don't think I had the right experiences in my life to identify with them. Like I just want to dance with girls or whatever. And it's like, I don't fucking care about any of this. It doesn't make any sense to me at all.
You're like, I do not know Motown Philly. I am not back again. Yeah. Boys to Men is not my thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I like to look at an attractive person and say, hey, they're a really good dancer.
Yeah.
That is not what I'm going to spend my time searching for.
Right.
Because it gets shoved down your throat everywhere. So that's the other part of it, is like, so there's so much stuff in the world that just gets played to death,
Mm-hmm.
I don't ever need to hear a lot of that shit ever again.
No.
But I'm gonna, because you got to go
to the
store, or, there's some Swiffer mop commercial or whatever. And it's like, we think you like Devo. So, I mean, there's no escaping it really. And especially as we age too, like we become this demographic of like, oh, these people grew up in the 80s. I think we should use this music in our commercial because they will identify with it. And that pisses me off too. Because it's like, what company, what are you doing? Like what gives you the license to try and appeal to me in this way? That is not right.
Right.
Because you're using this music that was made totally unconnected to whatever your fucking mop commercial or your car commercial is going to be. I'm not going to buy your car. I'm probably never going to mop my floor now. Fuck you,
Yeah. The you clearly have developed skills in regards to what, business human beings, professional human beings, the project management skills that you have to have in putting out records and booking tours and all that sort of stuff. Did that side of, I'm going to use air quotes here because, the music industry, as it were, you exist, very much outside of that. You use some elements of it. Did that... Did that reveal itself to you like pretty early as you started to, play in bands and put together stuff? Was that, is that something that you still enjoy, or is that just like, well, I like the end result, I don't like all this stuff in the middle?
To say I enjoy it would be a lie.
Okay, fair.
I dislike, no, I hate paperwork. Like more than anything in the whole world. It's the fucking worst. Like, I would rather go to prison than have to do paperwork all the time.
Sure.
This is fucking awful. Like, data entry and all of that kind of stuff just drives me up a wall, because it's, to me, feels like such a waste of time. And I understand that you have to do prep work to have a desirable end result. I get all of that. But the process of doing it is just like madness to me. But I also understand the need for it. So like, I know that our band is not going to be able to go on tour unless I make a bunch of phone calls or send a bunch of emails or whatever, like whatever needs to happen to get the shows booked in the right order so that we can drive to the right places, I'll do it. And I approach all of these tasks in a very sort of logical way. And I know they're necessary, but I detest it.
Like, I
just
set myself up.
Play music. Like, I just want to play drums, and I just want to skate, and I just want to listen to records. You know what I mean? Like, I don't. It makes me crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you saying that, because not only are you being honest, but like, there's definitely people that find enjoyment of certain aspects of that, but then for whatever the vocalist of a band is like booking the shows, and they're like, oh yeah, this is cool, I like this. And then the other people where it's like, get me so far away from talking to anybody to like book a show or whatever. And sometimes people, they get it thrust upon them, and then they're terrible at it, and then it just kind of completely falls apart. So at least you've shown some proclivity towards that.
Yeah. The funny part is that when we're at the shows or we're at any social fun, I love socializing with people. I love just chopping it up in person, having a face-to-face conversation. We can do that all fucking day.
Yeah.
If I find the subjects, interesting and the people are cool and fun to talk to. Like, I'm not going to go to a business conference and be like, you guys, seriously, all that data? Isn't that awesome? Like, that's not going to happen. But
can't wait to go to a business mixer. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Or like a new products invention. Amazing.
Oh,
I get these funny emails from companies sometimes who are offering their services because they figured out that we're a record label or something. And just the cold calls that I get from some of these places are so hilarious, but they're just like, oh, we're hosting this, mixer in your town. We would love for you to come and like talk with other people that are part of your industry. And it's like, man, you have no idea how far off target you are with this email. And I get that you're just probably just reaching out to everybody and you're trying to cast a net and blah, blah, blah. But
yeah,
man, there's nothing that sounds more terrible to me than that. Like just going and like, what's the word? Like rubbing elbows with strangers.
Yeah, networking. Yeah,
trying
exactly.
to find a common ground that I will eventually use in some sort of commercial money-making way. Just no thanks. That doesn't sound
hard pass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to talk about old punk records? Yeah, all day. Let's
all day long.
I love that shit.
Yeah, you want to talk about your 15 Septic Death bootlegs? Sure, I'm here for it. Yeah.
You want to talk about first pro model skateboard? Fuck yeah.
One of the finest purveyors of heavy music merchandise and records on the internet is evilgreed.net. I can guarantee you that if you listen to this show, you will love this site and all of the stuff that they have, whether it's exclusive merch, exclusive colors of vinyl, or just the fact that you can shop in one spot from all of these awesome bands, whether it's stuff from Run for Cover, whether it's Speed or Knocked Loose, or whether it's a metal band like Blood Incantation. I love this site. They ship from Berlin, Germany, but to us in the United States, no problem whatsoever. Not only do they ship to us, but the shipping rates are very advantageous for us. I love this site so much because it really truly reminds me of when I first started getting into punk and hardcore and was ordering from like Revelation Records and Very Distro and the Victory Records catalog. All of this stuff I could order from one spot and it comes to me so easily. So evilgreed.net is the place where you need to check it out. And like I said, just shop around for like 15 minutes and you will be having a lot of items in your cart. I can guarantee that. I love them. I love what they do. And they support independent music in a very real way. So shout out to evilgreed.net. Let us go check them out right now. Interestingly enough, a similar question I was going to ask in regards to the fact that yes, you've had your longtime collaborator with John, but you've been in a lot of different bands in a lot of different circumstances from, playing with Innumerable Forms and, the times that you filled in with Gehenna and all that sort of stuff. Like you've worked with a lot of different people and a lot of different personalities. And like not everybody can do that and then actually have something to show for it. Like, of course, there's 1,000,001 bands that are, littered on the side of the road of projects that have never come to fruition. What do you think, I guess, gives you the ability to, find your way not only into these situations, but then also like actually get something, tangible out of that?
I learned how to play drums. That's the
helpful
easy answer to that one.
Yeah.
Realistically, though, the people that I end up playing music with, I think that we work well together because most of the people that I end up gravitating towards have some kind of a vision or a direction that they want to go in. And I certainly have my opinions on how music should go as well. And I think that having a notion of what you want out of any creative endeavor that you're going to do is going to save you a lot of time, and it's going to make the time that you spend with other people so much more productive. Because there's a lot of great bands out there that have such a hard time writing new material because they just don't know what they want. And like, I know what I want almost always. And I have a lot of ideas, and they're not all good ideas, but I want to try them out, And so if I have an idea about something and I'll be like, hey, you play guitar and I like the way that guy plays bass and this guy has a pretty good voice. Let's put it together and see if we can make it happen. And I'm not always trying to start new bands all the time or anything like that. I just get lucky, and I've gotten lucky over the years and found, 2 or 3 people that I really click with. Like John is, he and I have been playing together since the 90s. And we've always kind of seen eye to eye on where we're going and what we want out of whatever it is that we're trying to write. Because he and I have done more than Iron Lung together. We've played in a few bands together. And we've always written well together because we're both flexible enough too in what we want that I'll be like, hey, I have this idea. We should do something that goes with this drum beat. And he'll be like, okay, let me think about that for a second. And then he'll write something that sort of goes with it. And, we'll keep massaging it until it's what we want. It's what we both want. And I've been able to have that relationship with a lot of different people. With Gehenna, I know it was a funny one because I was just playing in hardcore bands that weren't great. They were fine. Certainly not anything to write home about or or brag about anywhere. But Dean, I think he came to shows and he would see me play drums and was like, "Hey, Gehenna needs a drummer for this tour that we're going to do. Do you want to try it?" And like I heard the music, and when I first heard it, I was like, "Oh, this is different than anything I've ever tried before." I didn't know what integrity was. I mean, I didn't know who Gehenna was when he asked. I was just like, "Yeah, okay, this dude's cool." Like we go skating, and I see him at the shows, and all right, let's hang out. So I started jamming with him, learned the songs, and we went and did this European tour, and then I was in the band for 10 years after that.
Whoops. Yeah.
I mean, it was just because we all got along really well and we all kind of knew what we wanted. And that one, yeah, I mean, Dean really steered the ship as far as like what he wanted the band to do. He would write a lot of the riffs, and I wrote some too. But I picked up on what he wanted pretty quickly, and was able to see in what direction he wanted to go, and be like, okay, now that I understand what this band is and some of the reference points that it's coming from, I can sort of inject some of my own ideas, and we can make something new that's cool and different. And I've taken that same exact approach to every band I've ever played in. And I also have this weird luck of being the second drummer in a band because there's these bands that go, right? And it comes from like the old days where it's like I heard Cold Sweat was another one. Before I moved to Seattle, I had heard the first Cold Sweat album, and I was like, damn, this record is amazing. It came out and it was like Black Flag and, Devoid of Faith, and like bands mixing these weird styles together at a time when there was just no music that sounded like that at all. It was nothing good. I mean, Crudos was done at that point, and there was just like no hardcore, really, not like that.
Right.
And then that Cold Sweat record came out, and I was just like, oh my, this is amazing. So, I mean, I wrote him an email. It was just like, hey, your band's fucking great. And then they played at my house, and I had gotten a knee surgery the day before they played at my house. And it was the only time in my life that I've ever taken any kind of pain pills or drugs of any sort. Because the doctor was like, I think that you're really going to need this because we did an ACL reconstruction on your knee, and it's going to be really painful for you.
This isn't going to be easy. Right.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I walked around on this injury for 2 years. I think I can handle it. And they're like, you really should take this medicine. And I was just like, fuck. All right, fine. And I took it once, and it was the day that Cold Sweat played in my house, a straight edge band.
Right.
In my house. And I mean, like I said, I'd never taken any kind of drugs or anything like that in my whole life. And I just felt so out of control. It was awful. But then when they started to play, I heard it in the basement. I was just like, God damn it. I can't even walk down the stairs to see this. And it sounds so fucking cool. And then, they stayed at the house, and we really connected as people. And I thought they were just so great. And then I moved to Seattle not too long after that, and wrote him an email. It was just like, hey, I live in the town now. I'm in your band. Like, when is practice?
Yeah, so when am I joining?
Like, it was literally that. And they were like, ha 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 ha. And I was like, I know, I'm just joking, but I love your band, and I think that you're the right people for me.
Yep.
And they're like, we agree. Also, our drummer's quitting. So do you want to play drums in our band for real? And I was just like, yeah, because I'll play guitar. I don't care, whatever. Right. I learned enough instruments that I could play whatever it is that you need, or maybe don't need, but just are going to have now.
Right.
And they were super cool, and they were just like, yeah, come on down and play. And so I've had a lot of experiences like that with bands where they're already an established band, and I've contacted them and been like, I love your band. I don't want anything from that contact. I just wanted to let them know, like, hey, I like your band a lot. I don't matter. I'm just a fan, just some random, I'm a postage stamp and a piece of paper to you, and that's fine. That's all it needs to be. But I like being able to tell people especially people that I don't know, that I appreciate what they're doing, because it matters. I mean, we work so hard on creative endeavors, and it's so easy to just disappear, because nobody's listening or no one cares, or, the way people contact each other these days is so temporary that it's really hard to sort of make a dent in the world. And also because there's just so much music coming out these days, everything's flooded with all this stuff. And so I like to try and contact people that I think are doing a good job of cutting through all the shit, because they made something that's worth listening to, certainly to me. And then I think other people should listen to too. But I don't say that to these bands. Usually it's just like, hey, I like your band a lot. Nice work. I hope I get to see you sometime. And if not, that's okay too. But just know that there's someone out there listening.
Right. There's some validation. Yeah.
And what you're doing matters. So,
Right.
and I think that's really important because I don't think that there's a lot of validation out there in the world at all for anything. And certainly not for creative stuff.
No, for sure.
There's a lot of creative people out there that just nobody knows.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is a kind of a random question, but something that has always, for as long as I've paid attention to, the beautiful subgenre of power violence, I've always been impressed at how well it travels. Because it's like, whatever. I'm just referencing like the early 2000s explosion of all the Japanese bands, like Total Fury, like what all this stuff where it's just like, oh, like it's coming over here to the States, and like it's also translating to their home country as well. And I know you've done your fair share of international touring with Iron Lung. Is it just kind of the immediacy of the genre where it's like you clearly can get the point of what we're trying to do because of short songs, fast, all that sort of stuff? Why do you think it kind of it can resonate globally maybe a little bit easier than other genres can?
Well, this type of music sort of goes back to what I was saying earlier about what it is in music that I search out. If you listen to a crossed out record, you're not listening to a crossed out record because they have cool riffs. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to hear a riff there, but what you're hearing is this raw brutality, and it's more than music, And to me, that's the epitome of the power violence genre, is that exact thing where you can listen to this, to someone just emoting so much rage, and it's chaotic and it's manic sounding, much like real rage is. And so when you listen to this thing, and maybe you're having a bad day, maybe you have a terrible life, I don't know, could be any reason, but whatever it is, I think it's a really easy genre of music to connect to because it's very honest. There's not a lot of posturing involved with power violence at all. Like maybe more now, but in general, it speaks to this simplicity of raw emotion, is why I think it's such an important genre of music, and probably why I enjoy playing that type of music, because you can express every bit of anger in your body in 15 seconds, and people will know exactly what the fuck you're talking about, because you're just like, you just gonna be like, I hate this, for 15 seconds straight, and I want to destroy it until it's like bits and pieces of glass and rubble on the street, or it's a person beaten to a pulp because you hate them, or whatever it is. Like, everyone can identify with that feeling.
Yep.
So I think that that genre just conveys that so effectively, and that's what I've really gravitated toward because of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably why we've endured for as long as we have. Plus, me and John, when we write too, like we're not trying to write music that we think is catchy for anyone except for us. Like, we write music that we want to listen to. And beyond that, if people like it, great. If they don't, great. We have an equal amount of investment in the people outside of our practice space.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe it might be rude to say, but maybe they're lucky that we make records sometimes, because, we'll get in there and we'll do our thing, and like, we'll come out of that feeling awesome. Be like, dude,
right,
these songs are so good. Maybe we should record them.
Yeah. Maybe we should put it out. Yeah.
Maybe,
we got this.
Maybe just have a document of it.
Right. Yeah. Just something to do.
Yeah.
I know you experienced, and you're probably still some version of this, as far as like, the carpal tunnel, like the health issues where you were really confronted with the fact of like, I don't know if I can be a drummer anymore, which clearly that's like a huge, anytime anybody confronts something that prevents them from doing something that they enjoy, is, devastating on many different effects. How did you, I guess, kind of, process that and like try to, still keep focused on the other things that you were doing from the label and all that stuff, besides just like completely, retreating in on yourself because you're like, I can't do the thing that has brought me a lot of joy in the past?
That's a good question. I have always had a philosophy of, and this definitely stems from skateboarding. I've had this philosophy of, I'm going to do this thing as well and as hard as I can for as long as I can. And then there's going to be a moment in my life that I know I'm not going to be able to do this activity anymore. Either because my body will break down or I won't be able to afford the equipment that is involved to do this, or I will lose interest and channel that energy into something else. So I've always sort of approached everything that I do with that mindset. And then when I started to get carpal tunnel, and my hands would fall asleep in the middle of our 25-second songs, so I get 10 seconds into a song and my hands would be so tingly and like asleep that I could barely hold the drumsticks anymore. I was like, well, okay, I guess this is probably the end of it. We'll just keep rolling until I literally can't hold drumsticks anymore. And it did get to a point where I couldn't button my pants on my own. And I was like, okay, now I got to do something about this. And so I went to the doctor and I was like, that's it, right? Like, you're just going to have to like put me out to pasture now. Like, you might as well just put a gun to my head and end my life because I'm not able to do this thing anymore. And he's like, oh, dude, you just have carpal tunnel. It's like this real easy surgery, snip, snip, couple weeks of recovery time, you're good to go. And I was like, that's it? It's not going to like ruin, you're not going to have to like amputate my hands because they don't work anymore because they feel like just gangrene and doesn't hurt. And he was like, oh yeah, no, it's a pretty common thing these days and I fix it all the time. You'll be fine. So I was just like, okay. And so I took a couple months off from playing drums, and we had a friend of ours play drums in our band, and that was kind of
that must have been weird. Yeah.
And it was great. I loved it.
Okay.
And at the same time, I was like, well, if I can't play drums anymore, then I'll just sing because my mouth still works.
Right.
Still
Problem solved.
And, I don't have to like worry about dropping a microphone. I can just duct tape it to my hand and start yelling and it'll be fine. So I wasn't I was certainly accepting of the idea of like, okay, maybe I won't be able to play drums, or at least I won't be able to play drums the way I want to play drums anymore. So, I made some adjustments. I could still play, we made
That's
a new
good.
record. So
yeah, exactly. You're like, I'm doing it. Yeah.
life's not over yet. I don't really skate as much as I want to anymore because my knees are totally shot, but
Sure.
you
gotta sacrifice one for the other.
That was the first one where I was like, okay, I might have to change the way I do things now. Because it hurts so much to go skating. And I still love it and I still think about it every day, but I definitely don't skate as much as I used to.
Sure.
And I know that at some point drums are going to be the same thing. And so I had a little bit of practice in approaching things, I guess. So when my hands started to give up on me, I was like, oh, okay, well, this is like round 2. Not skating as much as I used to anymore. And now I can't play drums as much as I used to anymore. So maybe I'll just concentrate on singing from now on. Or maybe I'll get better at art or something. I don't know. I can't fucking draw at all, but maybe I'll figure it out,
Right. You can move your attention towards something else. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm like a creative enough person that I can figure out some way to make something that I like.
Yeah.
Whether it's art or music or, food, whatever, I'm going to figure it out. And I think it's just, I just want things in my life. And I know that I'm going to have to do whatever I have to do to make those things be in my life. Part of growing up in Reno where there's nothing for you, this is how you have to operate. I've always operated that same way. So if my hands stop working, then I don't know. I'll play drums with my feet. Who gives a shit? We'll figure it out. Work for the Death Effort guy.
Totally. Yeah.
There's
a whole film
will
made out of,
but it'll still be fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't do it for recognition anyway. I just do it because that's what I want to hear.
No, for sure. I mean, Daniel Day-Lewis did that film, My Left Foot, where he learned how to draw and write. So it's like, dude, drums, easy compared to that.
Nice. My Left Foot. Hold on. Nobody talks about that one. I love that scene when they rip off the coal truck. That's the shit. Right.
A few last things I want to hit on was I realize this is a, crass business question, but just something that I'm curious about and you can answer it one of two ways. Like the best selling release from Iron Lung Records, or a record that you were, surprised at being clearly you love everything you put out, which it's just great. But something that you've been like, hey man, I'm just putting this out. Like, I don't expect to sell any copies of this. You can answer that question one of either way, whatever you're more comfortable with.
Yeah, we have a lot of releases that I know nobody gives a shit about at all.
Got it.
As evidenced by piles of them in my garage. The best. So I guess the way that we're able to afford to do the releases where I know no one's going to care. I have a job, and personal finances go into that all the time. But when we do have a record that sells well, that makes it easiest for us to afford to do the records that we know aren't going to sell well. And so it's a balancing act, right? Like, we know that every time we put out a Total Control record, we'll be able to put out like 3, I don't know, self-com releases, or 3 torture commer things, whatever, any number of releases that we put it up and, one person is like, yeah.
You're like, that's for you. That's exactly why we did this.
You just need like 299 more people to like this. It'd be awesome.
First press sold out, baby.
Yeah, that's all you need.
Yeah.
And, and it's always been that way. It's always been a balance. Because even going back to the very first release, the Lords of Light record, nobody likes Lords of Light. They never have. And they probably never will. I don't know. Maybe they will, but I certainly do enough to put my money into releasing a record for it. And then the next release that we did was, I think, a Walls record or something, which was like a current band that I was in with people from Cold Sweat. We knew someone would give a shit about that. So it's a wash. And then it was like an Iron Lung record right after that, just a single, but we knew people were going to care about that too. So, it makes financing the stuff that we don't think is going to sell easy, because we're lucky enough in that our tastes are broad enough that will appeal to enough people to sort of make it all sort of work out.
Right.
I certainly don't have any extra money to do anything with. Right. But we make enough money for the label to support itself. And that to me that's great.
Right.
I mean, we're lucky in that regard.
Yeah. That's success.
Yeah.
Do you still work at Scarecrow Video? Is that your is that your day gig, so to speak?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I'll be there tomorrow.
Spectacular.
Yeah. That's why I was excited that you brought up My Left Foot.
Right. I know you're a film head. You know, these are things that are connected. Scarecrow Video, for those that obviously are not familiar, it's like, one of the larger video stores that exist as far as catering to all genres and all physical media. So I'm sure the connective tissue that you see between, physical products of film and then the physical products that you put out, that's a real easy dovetail, and they both work well within your own brain.
Sure. Yeah. Also, it's not larger, largest.
Largest.
And I want someone to come out and say, "Oh, we have way more shit than you," because there's no one has more stuff than we do.
Are you staking the claim for all of the United States? Is this North America? Is this world? What are we talking about?
World, man. You know anyone in the world that has more than 160,000 different titles? No.
As a person that
combine all the streaming services, even if you want, combine them all into one thing, we still got more shit than them.
Right, totally.
It's incredible.
You're like, listen, we got Cannibal Holocaust here, so we're fine. We're doing fine.
We have a whole section of movies like that.
Of course.
The Mondo section. There's some crazy shit in there. It's awesome.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. Cannibal Holocaust that's a rough one.
Yeah, you watch it once and you're like, I see why people had a problem with this.
Yeah.
It's not a rewatch.
Yeah. I still work there. It's such a great place, and it's a nonprofit now, which has been kind of a weird thing to see develop because we weren't a nonprofit when I first started there. I started working at Scarecrow the same year that we started releasing records on Iron Lung Records.
Oh, cool.
And so it's been this sort of synonymous thing in my brain ever since. But yeah, I mean, when it was a for-profit, just a regular old brick and mortar store, and then people just stopped coming there because they were like, "Oh, Netflix is easy. We'll just do that." And people still the same way. I mean, there's a whole generation of kids who don't even know what a video store is. And they walk in and they're just like, "What the fuck is this?
Where do I go?"
It's like a library, but without all the boring books. They got all the cool movie versions of everything that you like. You'll like it here, and they're just like, "Ew, I have to touch stuff." I don't.
Yeah, I gotta wait. I have to interact with another human being to ask them where something cool is.
I have to have some sort of a thing that will play the thing that I take from here on a TV. Yeah, there's people that come into our store that don't even have TVs.
Yeah,
it's like I just watch everything on my laptop. It's like, your life is out.
Yeah.
You got to do yourself a service and at least buy a fucking television. Because goddamn,
of course,
how are you going to watch a story like this and just have it be on this tiny little screen?
Exactly.
It's like, yeah, I saw Mad Max Fury Road on the airplane, this tiny little screen, and it was pretty epic, dude. And you're like,
yeah,
okay, yeah, all 4 inches of that screen were enough to contain a movie of that magnitude. I think not.
Of course, as George Miller intended, obviously.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
we didn't spend hundreds of millions of dollars making that movie so you could watch it on your phone.
No, it's totally fine.
Yeah, that's a whole separate episode of whatever this turns into. That could go
absolutely. Yeah.
I love they're great.
I love that. The very last thing I want to hit was the fact that as an observer of independent music in general, one would point to this particular juncture of punk, hardcore, all of that stuff being the most popular it ever has been. And clearly there's people that, have arguments on the internet, which I'm not here to litigate or ask you about. But how have you observed this, outsider art, for lack of a better term? And clearly it's gone through different mainstream iterations over time, but now it feels like another kind of inflection point. Or do you even, I mean, I'm sure you care to a certain extent, but is there observations that you're making on wow, I didn't think that this genre would get as popular as it is, but here we are.
Sure, of course. I mean, there's always a surprise out there. Yeah. I can't really think of a specific thing off the top of my head that would be a surprising popularity. I think that I remember one time I was waiting at band practice. This Fashion Change is the band I'm playing in now. It's a relatively new thing, but and everybody in the band is minimum probably 10 to 15 years younger than me, which is a hilarious thing for me to experience because they asked me to play drums and I'm just like, yeah, of course I want to do this. And they asked me right as the pandemic was starting to open back up. And so I was just like, dude, any band, I don't care what it is. I want to play. Let's do that. I'm vaccinated. Let's roll. And so, we started doing all this stuff and, bands were starting to tour again. And then, so we had set up a practice time, on whatever day it was. Okay, we're going to meet at the practice space at this time on this day. So I get off of work. I go to the practice space. I'm sitting there for an hour just playing. Because I was like, I'll just play until they get here because it's fun. And I'm like, what the fuck? Where are these guys? Did I get here at the wrong time or whatever? So I text them. I'm like, are we practicing today? And they're just like, oh, dude, we forgot to tell you. We're at the 100 Gex show. And I was like, what is 100 Gex? And they were like, you don't know what this is? And I was like, no. So I looked it up and I got so fucking angry. I was like, you're skipping our band practice to listen to this horse shit? This is the real fucking music I've ever heard,
Sure.
And so stuff like that, where I'm just like, okay, this is new. Whatever music this is, it's brand new. I've never heard anything that sounds like this. I don't like it.
Sure.
Don't automatically
like, I'm not attached to the emotion of this.
Yes. But I was just also, it had this other stigma attached to it where I was just like, I can't believe that you flaked on me to go do this. This is very upsetting. And now I can't listen to this band ever again because every time I hear it, I'm just going to be mad.
Totally.
There's like this new kind of pop music that's happening. That's sort of, that band is part of it. And it's mixing all of these different things together that are, like glitchy techno processes and weird instrumentation. Will be electronic bits and pieces mixed in there. Noise will be in there. Just whatever. It seems like it's a real, put a bunch of things into a blender and see what, like, take the lid off and see what flies out. And like, that's what it sounds like. And I think that's great. I think it's great when people experiment with things like that. And, they're constantly remixing music to make it sound new. And that's one of the things I like about hip hop so much is, that style of music has regenerated its sound and warped its sound, like, I don't know, 20,000 different times over the last 4 decades that it's been a style of music. I mean, you listen to Sugar Hill Gang compared to, like, J. Cole or something, and it's like they're so far removed from each other, but they're still the same genre of music.
Right.
And I love that amount of innovation within even just one genre. And so I appreciate it a lot when pop bands do the same thing, because, you can listen to pop music from the 50s and then you can listen to pop music from 2025 and it's like, how is this the same? It's not.
How do we get here? Yeah.
But it is all under the guise of popular music. It's like, this is shit you'll hear on the radio.
Uh-huh.
And it's just people's tastes change and the styles change and the instrumentation changes. Just the amount of electronic music that's coming out these days is just mind blowing. And you don't even have to have instruments anymore. You can just have you can have a keyboard and just beep and boop your way to success. You have yourself a gold record, and all you did was sample something from the radio and sing over it. Because there are people who do that too, and I think that's amazing. But I don't necessarily want to listen to it all the time.
Sure.
But I can appreciate the craft of it, and I can appreciate the innovation of it. But yeah, I think that. So going back to your question though, that style of pop music that's a thing right now is hard for me to stomach.
Sure. It was shocking.
I don't understand it, and it's like, to me, it sort of reminds me of there's like a tone that young kids would get in their phones that was like a text message alert tone that anyone that's an adult or have gone through this level of maturity, like your ears can't hear that tone anymore. Like you can't hear that frequency anymore. And so all these kids will have it in their phones and just be like texting each other during class or something. And the teacher has no idea because he can't hear it. And all these kids are like, he's that dude's fat, or whatever it is that these kids are risking their time to text each other. It's very important, whatever it is. But, and I love the idea that there is something out there that's not for me, like it's not made for me to listen to. And the whole point of it is that it's not for me. And I like that. And I love that they're just specifically like, not you, dude. This one's not for you. This one's for us. And I think that's great.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I don't want to listen to it, because then I would feel like a phony. I'd be like, you know what? Yeah, this is for me, guys. Like, that's like narc behavior, I don't want to roll up to the show and just be like, hello, children. Do you know where I can score some drugs possibly? And they're just like, fuck off, narc.
Yeah.
Listen to
this is, yeah.
This
show is,
totally.
The show is fire.
Yeah. I mean, that's a thing I'll never say out loud, and I'm not against it. And I think it sounds perfectly natural when people say it and they mean it.
Right.
I don't feel like it's right for me.
Yeah. You're like, I gave it a try in my head. It doesn't land. So it's we're
stupid,
moving on.
I'll type it out first a couple times,
Yeah.
Give
it a trial run.
No. Yeah. I'd rather just actually type the word fire and have it mean something that's really hot and is going to burn me.
Yeah,
not
exactly.
That I think is something is cool. Because I'm not cool. I don't know. I'm just a guy.
Thank you very much to the awesome Jensen Ward. And I loved tripping down memory lane with him, but then also talking about all the cool stuff he has going on. Because after all, music even though we like a specific genre or subgenres, just be open. Music can take you to so many different places, and especially as long as it's coming from a real and true place, then holy moly, you are in for a treat. So thank you, Jensen Ward, and thank you to Iron Lung and Iron Lung Records, and Bailey, his publicist, for hooking this all up. Next week, I have a industry conversation. I have Troy Lusk, who is the founder and lead agent, or I don't know, maybe just call himself agent, of Tour Peachy, who books bands like Scowl. I'm fairly certain they work with Drain, could be wrong on that, but he works with a lot of cool bands of all shapes and sizes and genres. But I met Troy many years ago at Chain Reaction, and I've admired the work that he's done as an agent, building himself up over time to where his roster is what it is now. It's so cool. I just love when people take the influence from like the punk and hardcore scene and then are able to make a living out of it. It's so cool. So I have Troy on the show next week. And until then, be safe, everybody.
Find yourself looking for a new job or change in career? Monster.com is here to help. We are not only here to bring you job postings, but also AI interview prep and salary tools, expert career advice, and top-notch resume services. We've got everything you need to land your perfect job fit. Discover the magic of finding the ideal job with Monster.com. Your future starts now. Visit Monster.com today. Your next job opportunity is just a click away.